Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. We're really excited to be talking about the Olympics this week as they are just a few days away. With that in mind, we are thinking a lot about Olympians, athletes, events, everything that we can't wait to watch, but something that's not on a lot of people's minds is tax law and what comes into play when Olympians win medals and the tax laws that they have to deal with when they come home. For that, we have Blake Christian, who is a CPA here in Park City as an expert in this field, to explain everything to us. Blake, how are you doing today?
Good to see you, Diego.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. So I didn't realize, and this is something that has changed, but pre-2016 Olympics in Rio, Olympians were paying a pretty steep price in taxes for their winnings during the Olympics.
Right. When you combine the federal and state and the self-employment tax, it was north of 50%, and they were often very surprised that they were going to get that bite out of their winnings.
So a lot of these athletes would go compete, pour their heart into the event, pour their heart out, and come back, and then they wouldn't even realize that they owed over, sometimes you said over 50% in taxes
right.
for their earnings from the Olympics. And this was regardless of whether they were a low-tier athlete or a high-tier represented by some of the biggest ad agencies, and it didn't matter what you were earning.
Exactly.
But that changed all in 2016, October of 2016 with the Obama administration, correct?
Right. There was a lot of press during the 2016 Olympics, and there were a couple of bills introduced over the last 10 years to exempt it. And finally, it got a little sympathy, and Congress and the Obama administration got it passed. But it was only after the Rio Olympics, but it applied retroactively to those.
It did apply to the Rio Olympics retroactively. Okay, well that's very interesting. So what's new? What's different about this new law? What's changed?
So the new law, and so all of the Korean participants will now be. You start off with an exemption, and so the $37,500 cash award plus the value of the medal, gold medal, is about $630. That will be exempt as long as that athlete does not make more than $1 million of adjusted gross income during 2018.
During 2018. So that's for the full year. That's regardless of whether they're making endorsement deals and stuff like that. So if they really are a high-tier athlete that has endorsements, the chances are that they're going to be pushing over that cap, which makes them non-exempt, correct?
Right, and then it would pull in the both the medal and the cash award as taxable. If you're under the $1 million, and that $1 million is measured without the Olympic winnings, then it'll be exempt.
So this is some good news for a lot of the athletes that make it to the Olympics, because obviously we follow a lot of the top tier athletes. They're in the spotlight throughout the whole year, especially in the months leading up to the Olympics. But what we don't realize is there's, thousands of athletes that have made it there on their own dollar and have spent their own money to make it to the Olympics. So it's kind of really saving them and keeping the dream alive for people who can't afford to or don't have the backing from large sponsors.
Exactly. So I think it's actually a very fair provision that, and $1 million is a pretty nice threshold.
Yeah, it's a good cap, yeah.
Right, so you could have some pretty nice mid-tier endorsements, still make $500,000 and have the medal and the cash award exempt.
And luckily, the medals don't have a very high intrinsic value. Otherwise, you'd be paying a lot of tax on that as well, right? $635 is good for the gold that you're getting, which I didn't realize that the gold medals are actually 1% gold, right?
Right. I don't think any of the athletes will complain, but yes, it's only 6 grams out of 586 are actually gold. So it's just gold-plated. Silver. Most of it's silver. And so you have this, you're thinking you're getting this 20-ounce medal and it's gold and you think it has a huge value, but as you say, intrinsically, the intrinsic value is only $635.
$635. So what can Olympians that are going to Pyeongchang this coming week, what can they expect if they win, say, a gold medal when they come home, and if they had no endorsements?
If they've had no endorsements, again, then it's tax exempt. They walk with, and again, it's nice that not just the medal, but the cash award, which is not insubstantial, $37,500 for a gold, $22,500 for a silver, and $15,000 for a bronze. All of that's completely tax exempt.
Wow, that's great. And so for people like Lindsey Vonn, per se, whose net worth is somewhere around $2 million or something around there, she would not be exempt from this, and she would be taxed.
Yep.
Is her tax, would that be similar to the previous tax at like a 50% rate, or is it going to be more of a localized 20% income tax range?
No, it'll be ordinary rates, so you have a maximum 37%, and I can assure you her net worth coming into the Olympics is skyrocketing, so she's,
she'll be in the top tier of the tax bracket.
Right. So she's going to easily be in the 50% plus range.
And kind of going back onto the cash prizes, the U.S. is surprisingly low, I guess you could say. They rank 9th in terms of the amount of money that they give in their cash purse for winning a medal.
Right.
I was surprised to see that countries like Singapore, Azerbaijan, who else? I think it was the Philippines maybe?
The Philippines,
huge, I mean, $735 for Singapore, $735,000.
Right.
For their gold prize in Singapore.
Right. And you wouldn't, you sit there and you say, okay, Singapore, they probably don't have a real big winter contingent, but they do have ice skaters and things, but I don't believe any of the 3 countries you've named have ever won a
medal in the winter.
Well, they haven't won a Winter Olympics. Azerbaijan, they've won 27, I think, Summer
Olympics. And I'm sure the price has a lot to do with the fact that they don't have a lot of medals coming back home to their countries, so they can obviously allocate a lot more money towards that. It's really interesting. I had no idea that athletes were subject to this tax. It's pretty interesting. Is this something that's common throughout the world, or is the U.S. pretty unique in the way that we tax our athletes?
It's a mixed bag, but most countries exempt it. There's a lot of pride of winning for the whole country, and so most countries exempt it, but a lot of the industrialized countries, like the U.S., have a history of taxing them.
Well, it's very interesting, and last thing I wanted to touch on, you're a CPA, so you love deductions, obviously. You help
Right.
a lot of people with deductions. What are some deductions that athletes have available to them if they aren't in that range of the plus $1 million cap range?
Right. Well, as you talked about, some of the lesser-known sports, even like men's ski jumping, which is fairly high profile, but we often don't medal, they have to pay their own way in a lot of cases. So it's friends, family, and their own funds to get there. So those athletes, and even the elite athletes, if they do come out of pocket for any costs, usually they'll report this on a Schedule C, and unreimbursed travel costs, things that they're out of pocket, not friends and family gifts necessarily, but they can pay those. They can claim those as deductions and lower that 50%.
Anything that came out of your personal pocket. Anything else is obviously considered like a donation towards your cause, but anything that came out of your pocket is basically like a business tax deductible. Then it's like business.
Right, and there can
expense.
be, some of those contributions could be taxable income also. It gets a little tricky.
Yes, absolutely.
So they should get advice, and I'm sure they will.
Well, Blake, that's what you're here available for. We have a lot of athletes from the Park City Nation that will be coming home, which I'm sure with a lot of questions about the tax laws and all of the tax confusion that can happen when all of this comes into play. So thank you so much for coming on and kind of clearing that up for us. We appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep. See you next time, and thanks for coming on, Blake. We'll be right back with much more on the Mountain Morning Show right after this, so don't go anywhere.